Let's turn to our next topic today, which is Scott Walker, who literally is globetrotting because he should be at this moment on his way back from Israel. He's expected to arrive back tonight and then continue his nation trotting on Saturday, heading to Iowa. Tom, you have a story that for PolitiFact coming out tomorrow morning, probably will post later today, about just how often he has been out of state and how often he's slept in the mansion. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, because of all of his travels and the fact that he's been criticized, particularly by Democrats, for not being in the state, we thought it was a good time to try to do an accounting of that. So we did that on two levels. One was how many nights has he been spending in Wisconsin? His official calendars are available for the first 3 months of the year. What we found is that he spent at least 42 out of the first 90 nights of the year in Wisconsin, so either in the mansion in Madison or at his home in Wauwatosa. Then the second measure was taking a look at how much he's traveled out of state or overseas, and we've run that through today, and we found that of the 134 days so far this year, he has been outside of Wisconsin on at least 59 of those days, so again, approaching the halfway point.
All right. Well, Craig, let me ask you this, because you've covered presidential politics for some time. I mean, a candidate has to travel the country. When do you think this becomes problematic for Scott Walker if he's seen as being too far or too often out of state and not attendant to things here in Wisconsin?
Well, judging from the last poll that Marquette did last month, it may already be problematic. I mean, he had his worst ratings in any of the polling that this particular pollster has done, going back to January of 2012, 41% approval. Easily his worst numbers. Now, we don't know whether how much of that may be due to the travel and the perception of some voters that he's not on the job as much. It could be partly due to the budget and the debate over his budget. There's some things in the budget that aren't very popular. It could just be, when you're running for president, as he is, he's running and speaking to a very conservative set of voters, which are more conservative on average than the average Wisconsin voter, because he's running for the Republican nomination. So all those things, I think, are can drag down his approval ratings in the state, and it'll be interesting to watch if that continues, and if that continues, whether that affects his presidential message at all, which, as we know, is kind of built on the idea that he's managed to take a very difficult swing state and achieve a lot of political success with a very conservative agenda.
All right, so if there were a checklist out there for a governor running for president, it would include a box of travel to Israel and meet the leaders there. Dan, do you want to talk a little bit about how did he do? It's hard to say because we weren't there and really no reporters were there.
Yeah, it's a very bizarre trip. I mean, because the upside for all this travel is that you're supposed to use this as a platform for your presidential run, but he's not done that. He decided not to have any press there, to have no public events. And so the headlines coming out of it all around the country have been, is this a listening tour or is he in hiding? He's taken no questions about Israel, which is a big opportunity for him to address social conservatives who care a great deal about Israel. And there's the Politico story today in which leaders of the Christian right are raising questions about his status as a candidate. It seems to me there was a missed opportunity. I know there are concerns that he didn't do so well when he was in England answering questions there. So they're playing it very safe by not having him address questions about Israel, which, that's a dicey situation. Clearly lots of tough questions he would have been asked, but they've taken the easiest road, which is to have him not answer any questions at all.
Craig, do you have a take on that? I mean, he goes through the time and effort to go there. Clearly he will learn something from being there, but has he advanced his presidential effort by making this trip?
Well, not as of now, but he'll be able to say down the road that he's been there. He'll be able to talk about the conversations he's had, and he's going to use that to try to sound, more informed about foreign policy and to sort of discuss or tout his foreign policy credentials. Those are all important things to do. It's awkward. I mean, it's awkward for any governor because by definition, you're not a foreign policy candidate and you don't have that background. So he kind of, one of the tricky things about all this travel is he's done 3 foreign trips this year, and he's kind of handled them all a little bit differently. I mean, he went to England and he had a public event, which led to some criticism over the way he handled some questions. Then he went to Europe as a governor, and that was very low profile. And then he went to Israel. It was a political trip, but kind of a gag order almost, in terms of media coverage. So he's handled all these trips in different ways, I think, because of the dilemmas you face as a governor trying to get up to speed on foreign policy.
You know, the thing is, he's such an accessible governor and someone who loves talking to the press. I'm sure this is a tough thing to convince him not to go there for 4 days and basically get a couple of photo ops out of it, and a conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu. It's interesting how he's having to change who he is while he runs for president.
Yeah, let me ask you quickly, Dan, before we shift to our next segment, on you referenced the Politico story about how he's going to be meeting with some social conservative leaders. In the polls, he seems to be doing well with the average social conservative voter, but what's the dynamic there?
Well, the thing is, Scott Walker, there are two parts to him. One, he is a very religious person, and at the same time, he's a very pragmatic politician, and those things come together in different ways. So at certain points, when he's asked during the last campaign his position on same-sex marriage, he says he has a position, but he doesn't want to tell us. Well, everyone knew what his position was, but he was being pragmatic, and he didn't want to bring that up at that time. Now some social conservative leaders see the fact that he has taken a pass on some of these social issues and say, is he very firm on these issues? And so he's got to explain why, when he's running in Wisconsin, he didn't make these social issues, abortion and same-sex marriage, at the top of his agenda.